So we are very happy to have with us Professor Terry Lamb today, who will speak about creativity, motivation, autonomy in language learning and teaching in heritage language schools. Professor Terry Lamb began his career as a teacher of French and German in London, progressing to a number of head of languages posts, and eventually to posts in the universities of Nottingham and Sheffield, where he focused mainly on postgraduate teacher education and urban education. He is now a professor of languages and interdisciplinary pedagogy at the University of Westminster in London, based in the Centre for Education and Teaching Innovation, which he established, and the School of Humanities. He has published widely in the areas such as pedagogy, motivation, multilingual education, multilingual cities, the ways in which constructs of place, space, and critical autonomy intersect in relation to language learning and linguistic diversity, and on activist research that challenges social, cultural, and linguistic injustices. His projects have been included several at the European Centre for Modern Languages of the Council of Europe, for example, supporting multilingual classrooms. He is founder editor of the academic journal Innovation in Language Learning and Teaching. He has worked closely on language strategy and curriculum with the UK and other governments in Australia, Czech Republic, France, and Malaysia, and he is a member of the Language Policy Advisory Group of the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. He is the president of Fédération Internationale des Professeurs de Langue Vivante, an NGO of UNESCO and the Council of Europe. He has also been awarded the honor of Chevalier dans l'Ordre des Palmes Académiques by the French Prime Minister. His talk on creativity, motivation, and autonomy in learning and teaching of heritage languages today will start with a brief look at what creativity means and why it's important in heritage language education. Then he will explore practical ways to nurture creativity in the classroom. He will focus on teaching methods that trust and value the learners, helping them become more independent and motivated. The keynote will also highlight the importance of recognizing and supporting students who speak multiple languages, showing how this can enhance creativity and learning for everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Professor Terry Lamb.
Thank you, Aga. Thanks so much for that. Thank you. And thanks, everybody. Thanks to the organizers of the conference for enabling me finally to connect with the whole community. I've met some of you individually, but never as a whole community. So it's wonderful to be here in this virtual land. I don't have a lot of time, but I have a fair number of slides, and that's deliberate. So I may, because I wanted to sort of provide you with things that you can look at afterwards as well. I'm very happy for my slides to be shared with everybody. So, and there are lots of links as well. So please don't worry if you see me skipping through. I would also add that it would be very, very lovely if you were to share your own ideas for creative activities, your own practices in the chat as well. So let's see if we can collect just lots of ideas that you can share with one another, because that's what it's all about, is sharing. I'm going to share my screen now, hopefully. Yes, I can see it. Good. So you can see, yeah. No, don't forget, I can only see
Perfect. It is good. It is good. Thank you.
That's always a relief, isn't it?
Yes.
A few of you. I won't be able to see what's in the chat because normally I do something a bit more interactive at the start, but never mind, that's fine. So you've seen my title, and first of all, I'd just like to say I've put there it's about heritage language schools, but please forgive me if I keep referring to supplementary schools. or even complementary schools, or even community language schools, because it's just a different way of talking about the same thing in different contexts. And I'm very used to the UK context where I call them supplementary schools. So apologies. The reason this is a conference on motivation, and the reason I focused on creativity was because creativity, as I'll show, really requires autonomy for a start. People need to be autonomous if they're creating, and autonomy is very, very closely related to motivation. If we think about it, it's very hard to be intrinsically motivated, which means that we're just doing something not because we're going to get a reward, but because we just like doing it, we love doing it, we want to do it. It's very hard to develop that if all you do is be told what you have to do all the time. Yeah, so we have to have opportunities to develop our autonomy as well. So that's why I'm looking at all of these different elements. Okay, so I'm going to try and push myself forward. Oh, come on, move. Oh, that is it. There we are. Yeah, and this is just an image I found that showed creativity in the middle, lots of things all around, including motivation, but I won't dwell on that. So the overview, I'm going to talk about creative classrooms, and in that I'm going to touch on these associated notions that I've listed underneath, as well as technology and diversity and creativity. It's quite a lot. I had a practice and I got halfway through in my half an hour, so I've chopped a lot since then, and fingers crossed. But if I keep digressing and talking to you like this, then I won't finish. That's my problem. And so let's go on to creative classrooms. So in my own, learner autonomy is one of my areas of research, as well as plurilingual, multilingual education. For me, creative classrooms are spaces to develop and experience learner autonomy. And by learner autonomy, I mean being able to manage aspects of our own learning, taking control over some of our own learning, if not all of it. I mean, it's difficult in a school context for people to be able to do just what they like. So there are always constraints. And to take that control over aspects of our learning, both individually, but also collaboratively. Autonomy is not about individual learning. It is about this capacity to be able to work autonomously, and creativity provides the opportunity for that. So what I want to show you now is that some time ago, a few years ago, I was invited to do a talk from teachers in Norway, primary teachers, because they'd just got this amazing new curriculum. If you can ever have a look at it, it's just amazing, that I think we should all adopt. One part of it was the joy of creating, engagement, and the urge to explore, which I think we would all want to help our learners to develop this joy for those things. And I'm just showing you this very briefly because although the word autonomy is not mentioned, you'll see the bits that I've highlighted are, for me, related to ideas of autonomy. And it is about giving opportunities to develop these areas. So seeing opportunity, transforming ideas into practical actions. Developing the urge to explore, asking questions, exploring and experimenting, different ways of being creative. Play is very, very important to creativity. And then finally, they're expressing themselves in different ways, solving problems and asking new questions. This is, for me, all about autonomy, and this is all of the things that our learners are developing through creativity, no matter where they are. This is all learned. Later on, I'll refer specifically to learners in supplementary schools. So what I want to show you is a few kind of practical examples, really, of creativity. This is part where I had far too much to say, and I know that you will have. I don't want to, as we say, teach grandma to suck eggs. You know, tell you things that you do every day, because I know that teachers are very, very creative. But it's pulling things together and showing you some resources that will give you new ideas. So, and I'm just going to show you this first of all, because this is the Young People's Foundation Trust, which is actually now where the National Resource Centre for Supplementary Education is located as part of this trust, the YPF Trust. And I don't know if anyone is here from the trust, some of my old friends. I was a trustee of the National Resource Centre for Supplementary Education for several years. And the work has been transferred here. This is a site, there happened to be a creative project that's collected lots and lots of examples of creativity from supplementary schools. And there's also, I put a link at the bottom there, and the Artists Foundation at the bottom there as well, is an organisation which is about creativity and creative practices. So I wanted to show you that because some of the ideas later on will be found, can be found here as well. So these are some headings I threw together. And of course, because I've got a line across the top, I can't see the whole screen. But I know that it starts with drama and performance. Drama can be very simple. You know, how do we make, you know, practicing a role play creative? Well, we can turn it into a drama. It can be improvised. It can be performed. It can be, characters can be given different persona. People can pretend they're someone else if they're interviewing one another, which is the next element there. So how we can make straightforward interviews, questions and answers, sort of transactional language. Creative is by dressing it up as a drama, giving people, telling them, right, you're going to be a happy person, you're going to be a sad person in this, you're going to be a very excitable person, really just changes it. So creativity can just be doing things that we do all the time slightly differently. Children can create posters. The favorite of mine that I used to always do was to get them to brainstorm ideas about why people should learn other languages and create posters on that could be displayed around the school and elsewhere. So it's just a poster. They can look very colourful, they create them, but it's actually getting across messages about why languages matter. Doing puzzles, creating puzzles in groups for another group to solve. Yeah, so they make resources for one another. They create resources. I remember doing that a lot when I was working with teachers in Malaysia. They went back and they did it, and they came back and they said that was amazing. They created materials and they were used by other classes. Using photos. I mean, you know, it depends on your context and the age you're teaching, but, you know, lots of people now have smartphones with cameras, taking photos of something that matters to them, something that is meaningful to them, bringing it in, telling a story about it, creating a display around that, taking a photo of places that are meaningful, places that have other languages on the shops or whatever, all of those things. And now, of course, you can use Photoshop, you can create photo stories as well, where the children will have a photo, but it's actually part of a story, almost like a comic book. Music songs, of course, and they can create songs. I'm sure you do that a lot, and developing web pages and blogs. The last three bits are stories, writing stories, telling stories, mind maps and poems. And I want to show you a couple of slides for these. I mean, stories, first of all, can mean all kinds of things. You know, they can be given a bag of things, what we used to call realia, you know, things that you might collect, random objects or tickets or little flyers or something, and say, make a story of that. They can read a story with sound effects. We always can have books and magazine boxes. But how do we use little language to help learners to think creatively and produce something meaningful? Well, you may have heard of these 6-word stories. And I can't see the top bit, but you can see the title. At the top, you've got a 6-word story. The urban myth, I don't know if it is a myth, is, you know, that it was produced as part of a bet that Hemingway could write a story in 6 words. If you look at those 6 words, there's an awful lot behind it. Yeah, it's very carefully, it's a very sad, poignant story in those 6 words. You can see 3 young people here. One's got on the left there, one bride, 2 words, first regret. Seems very young to be so cynical. Opened it, the one on the right, opened a new door, discovered myself. So with very little language, people can create something, but it takes a lot of thought. Search 6-word stories in Google, you'll get lots and lots of examples. So I put the link there, but you could just search for it yourself. So 6-word stories, great. I also mentioned mind maps, and just in case you weren't sure what I was referring to, it's this kind of thing that you know, people can kind of start with a word and then draw a map. And it's about words, but it can be about verbs, it can be all sorts of things. But it is using little language, but getting them to think about the meanings and how they relate to each other. And it can create wonderful displays. Very early in my career, I went to an event that was led by Barry Jones. Some of you may know Barry, but Barry sadly died a few years ago. He was a teacher educator in Cambridge. I was a young teacher. I was very pleased to be able to work with him in later years. And he introduced us to these simple stories where you start like with hello and goodbye. He gave us a German example, Hallo Wurst, auf Wiedersehen Hunger. So hello sausage, goodbye hunger. Some of his work has been collected in an archive. You'll see a link at the bottom. It's on the Association for Language Learning website. It's all been pulled together. And this is a really good example by a 13-year-old in French. Bonjour matin, au revoir sommeil. So good, hello morning, goodbye sleep. Hello homework, goodbye freedom. Hello Christmas, goodbye money. And so it carries on to the end. Hello, handsome boy, goodbye heart. Just lost her heart to this person. So again, you know, just with very simple words, it's not about some big project. These are things that can be done very, very simply and displayed. Other poems, calligrams. So this is a new publication come out where there's a whole collection of these calligrams. Sometimes they're called shape poems or concrete poetry. There's a heart. with, you know, I love my family, and then inside, I love my mum, I love my dad, I love my brother, blah, blah, blah. And it's the shape of a heart. This is a collection, again, online, it's available. You can get it as a flip book. There's a book for ages 7 to 9 with examples, and there's also one from 9 to 11. There's one written in Arabic. You look for cat poems. I know that some of you will be cat lovers. I know one person in the audience, definitely, who is a cat lover. And this is, you know, a story of the cat wandering the streets in the shape of a cat. I love this one. Once I was only very small, but now I am taller than tall, and it goes up. It's just beautiful with very little language, but very, very creative. Back to cats, acrostics, that's where you've got the word cats with a word that's related to it. Again, a link to cat poems, and haiku, the Japanese short poems. So, you know, another example there. Whoops, I didn't want to go to there yet. Okay, so that worked my way through the list. What I wanted to say really is this idea of all of these activities are what we can say are authentic. They have authenticity. They are personalized. They mean something to the people that are producing them. They're relevant to them. It's their own imagination. Even if it's something about space or whatever, it's their own imagination. So this idea of authenticity is important. Has a purpose and it has an audience. They're writing these things to perform to others or for other people to read. So I wanted to mention Jimmy, and Jimmy was a participant in a research project that I did many years ago, but I always come back to Jimmy. He was 13 and he'd been learning German for a couple of years, and his school had taken part in a multilingual festival in Sheffield. It was held in one of the universities in Sheffield Hallam University, organised by the Association for Language Learning. We put by the local branch that I was part of at the time. And I asked them to think about moments where they were learning languages that were that they enjoyed, that they remember. Okay, this is what he said in the focus group. Once I felt I was really using it when we were doing this thing for the university, and we had to do either a cartoon strip or a letter. We had this like Star Trek type cartoon strip that got put in the university. So I felt I was really using it. It had to be good so people could understand it. So that was the first time I ever thought I was really using it, German, not just for the sake of it. Yeah. So the importance of audience. Now, I think, you know, working in supplementary schools, you know, you've got an audience within the school and within the community. So, you know, it's worth remembering this, that it is about that sort of authentic learning that is about something that becomes real, even if it's a Star Trek type cartoon. And speaking of which, cartoons are also a great thing to do. So moving forward, I want to talk about the benefits of collaboration and collaborative creativity. For me, this is about reflecting what we call constructivist learning. So it's not, working in groups is not about being told what they need to do. They've got to work out and construct, create knowledge themselves, autonomously, of course, collaboratively. A few examples of this I want to share with you from supplementary schools. So the first is from Vali Leitra, and it was an article where she had been working in 2 supplementary schools in London. And she observed how children creatively transformed an authentic Turkish children's song. So they weren't creating the song, but they worked collaboratively to decide how to perform it. And that involved what she called semiotic resources. So they could whistle, they could clap, they could hum, they could change the rhythm, but they really connected with this song because they were making it their own creatively in some way, and they could perform that. The next example is by Anderson and Chung. This was another project working with 4 schools, 2 community language schools and 2 mainstream schools, actually, but they created, they collaboratively developed through dance, song, drama, puppetry, artworks, films, scrapbooks, and through this, Anderson says that it showed the ways in which creativity didn't just help them to meet their learning needs, but also their emotional needs. So they were using techniques that they'd experienced in their supplementary schools, which were the Arabic, Chinese, Punjabi and Tamil schools had been involved in those. And they evaluation of this, the research of this, and I'm quoting here, demonstrated that they provided children with opportunities for dynamic interaction with their heritage and culture, as well as opportunities for multi-literacy development, cognitive challenge, teamwork and collaboration, deep intercultural understanding, including symbolic, spiritual and moral dimensions, enhanced motivation, and a greater capacity for learner autonomy. And basically, it's the same with Leiter's research. Children were offered a space in which they were given the opportunity to interact with these works in their own terms, to reinvent and reinterpret them for themselves. Okay, so these 4 schools worked collaboratively, and there were 4 I think I said it wrong, 4 supplementary schools and some mainstream schools worked collaboratively across those languages. There was a lot of technology in this, but I want to say something about technology and creativity. So it could be argued that the COVID pandemic and the move to online learning stimulated creativity. At the time, I was a trustee of an RCSE, and so I worked with a young intern, Iman Manabadi, in 2020, to find out what supplementary schools were doing and to collect creative ideas. These are now fed into the website that I showed you earlier, some of these ideas. But there were a wide range of creative online activities that even cross disciplines. So a lot around traditional songs and music. Food was popular, learning about, for example, how fruit and vegetables grow, with children drawing details of the process, growing some at home. So they were engaging physically and cognitively with the science behind plant growth. Games, of course, language bingo and hangman featured a lot. Online quizzes, didn't we all do that in lockdown? But the photographs and paintings, this was a project by one of the Albanian supplementary schools. Wonderful. So they wanted to do activities that online that could be carried out by learners, obviously autonomously outside, not offline rather. So they had to find old photographs of paintings and reenact them themselves. So you can see here what's going on. So they created them themselves. They uploaded the new and the old versions together with a written description in their home language. And of course, they researched, they found out who the artist was, researched their lives, and wrote a brief comment. You'll find this also now on that website, which I put up above in the link. the YPF trust. Okay, and that was another example. So wonderful story there from supplementary schools. Diversity and creativity, I'm kind of moving towards the end. I've no idea because I can't see my clock here. I think it's 1:45. Diversity and creativity. And this is also about kind of how people, including supplementary schools, can collaborate across. So Spresa, for example, is an Albanian supplementary school that I work a lot with in London. And they are very well established and they support other supplementary schools. There's a network and they support and collaborate with other schools. This is a workshop that I did actually, which I'll mention later on. And just to give you an example of somewhere you can go to find some wonderful, absolutely wonderful work on collaborative learning through diverse languages working together is this. You probably heard of it, multilingual digital storytelling project. Led by Goldsmiths. You probably maybe spoken to you already. If not, then he needs to come along and do so. But this is a project that is working across 7 different countries with heritage languages, but also foreign languages and teachers of those as well, bringing people together. I can't say as much as I would have liked to, and I would have liked to have shown you the videos, but what they have done is they've collaborated to create digital stories in bilingual versions, documentary, science fiction, fantasy, traditional tales. Some of them are quite simple, so you've got a series of photos with a voiceover. Some of them are really, really amazing. We're using moving images, stop whatever you call stop animation, green screens and all kinds of things. Go and have a look at some of them. This is one of them, which is actually tracking the journey of a young girl from Syria to France as a refugee. So do have a look at that project for examples of how working collaboratively can really support you. I want to introduce you to supporting multilingual classrooms. It's a training and consultancy activity that I lead for the European Centre for Modern Languages of the Council of Europe, but also funded by the European Union. And to date, since 2015, we have done, I had to count them and now I can't find where I put it, but never mind, many 76 workshops in, I think, 29 different countries across Europe. Yes, that's right. And we work with teachers, and in some cases we've worked with teachers in supplementary schools together with mainstream. We've worked with teachers from early years all the way up through to teacher educators, universities, ministry people, all kinds of different people, head teachers. But one of the things that we're trying to do is to help people to value the language diversity that is around them, rather than seeing it as a problem, because there is a tendency to see it as a problem, particularly in mainstream schools, where there's a tendency not to allow home languages to be used in the classroom. I stopped talking about that because I could go on for a long time. But one of the things that we do is as a creative approach to exploring our own plurilingualism. So we do this through bodies, and we do this with the participants first of all, and we give them a body outline. This is an old one. We now have a kind of neutral one that isn't gender specific, but I just like this one because this is was a 13-year-old girl in southern Germany, and we asked them to think about all of the languages or varieties of languages, the dialects, accents, languages that they know fully, languages that they only know partially, that may only know a little bit of, and to put them in different parts of the body, thinking about why they put them there. It's very creative. So they color code the languages. So this girl here has got German in her head. She says she thinks and speaks in German usually. She's got English in her hands and feet, quite common. Tools, you can use them or you can travel with English. She's got, very common, the blue is her mother tongue, which is Russian. And she says she's got an emotional connection. Sometimes it's in the heart. I think that's meant to be the heart. I don't know why it expands to her arms, but never mind. It's her core, mother tongue. She's got a bit of French in her wrist, which she says she's learning in school, but she doesn't have a connection with it, really. The other one, it says 2 words, friends and neighborhood, and that's Turkish. Now, I don't know if she knows much Turkish, or she might have learnt the odd word from her Turkish friends. But what is wonderful is how this girl has incorporated Turkish as part of her own identity. It's become part of her as well. And I think that's really what we're wanting to do in education generally. So thinking of ways of doing that is wonderful. It doesn't have to be a body, or they can write about it. It could be a house. Put your languages in different rooms. The point is reflecting on why. And the teachers always say, I say, what have you learned from this? Well, you know, languages come with stories. They learn so much about each other when they describe their body to the others. All of these stories come out. But they also say, you know, it's about their histories and about people, and it's about their identities. And therefore, it's very, very important that they're included. This is a wonderful one. It's got a voiceover, but I don't think I have the time probably to, I may play a little bit.
Orange is the beach where I can stand and I feel safe. It symbolizes Swiss German. On the next step, you see the light blue water and you realize it is clearly. This stands for High German. The farther the sea, the darker the blue water. That reflects those languages which I am less confident to speak, like English than French or Mandarin. The yellow sun means the language which I'd like to speak. That would be Spanish. You see the little black birds, which means the little languages were acquired somehow, like Turkish, Italian, or Vietnamese. And the white sky represents my mother tongue, Cantonese. It is always there, doesn't matter where I am or whether it's day or night.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Terry. That's absolutely amazing. I don't know if you want to finish with the last slide.
Yes, I can move forward because then you can look at the rest yourself, but I would like to move to the last slide. I mean, just briefly, ECML has lots of projects. So this is just one of them. It's called ILI, Inspiring Practice, loads and loads and loads and loads of ideas. Yeah, that's one of the things. City Centre Festivals is where I've collaborated with supplementary schools in Sheffield City Centre. Whole programme of activities, wonderful, bringing the world, showing the world that is in our city, with an interactive exhibition that, again, I'll just flash through, but you'll see, you know, the potential of having simple cards. This why languages matter. My favourite language is, and they complete it. And they display these, and they look and they put stars on the ones that they like. Knowing another language made a difference to my life when, and that's a lovely one, but I don't have time. So, conclusion, creativity can be developed through belief and trust in our learners. We have to trust our learners. We can't underestimate them. If you let them loose with something inspirational to do and creative, they will really never let you down. Autonomy, authenticity, collaboration, technology, diversity, all important. opportunities to make meanings that matter to them and to make the language their own, to produce new ideas, bring their own identities into the learning process. But I'm going to end with Iman, the intern I mentioned. I asked him to write, he's written a blog, he wrote a blog, and I asked him to start by thinking about why creativity matters. And I'll just end with his words there, the second quote. Creativity is all the more vital in supplementary schools. Creativity actively seeks for the participation of the student, and in doing so, they not only develop ideas, but a sense of who they are as they're being welcomed to use their own cognition and to form an identity for themselves. I speak on behalf of personal experience in that I grew up in high school. However, I was raised by my supplementary school, as it gave me that space to see who I was within the greater context of my own community. Thank you so much for listening. And there are some references there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Terry. That was very inspiring. Talk about creativity, talk about authenticity, the need for authenticity, motivation, and autonomy. May I ask if anybody has any questions, please put them in a chat or raise hand and you can speak. We've got just a few minutes before we will have a break. And perhaps Terry, it follows, if I may start, it follows with what's the quote that you have used for Iman. And I just wonder, do you think that heritage language schools or supplementary schools are in better position to use the creativity that you're talking about more than the kind of daily schools? You showed us that in Norway, they're changing, they program their curriculum, but do you think the heritage language schools are better placed to do so?
I mean, well, first of all, I should say that, I mean, I can't imagine teaching without creativity in any context, but where, like in Norway, when it's on the curriculum, when it's referred to explicitly, then of course it will be done in mainstream schools. But the challenge is in schools where it's not mentioned and they have a very tight curriculum that they need to meet and they need to achieve and they need exams and all of that kind of thing. So it tends to constrain teachers, I think, to sticking to the less creativity than they probably would want to, because they see it as being taking time that they don't have. Whereas, of course, in the supplementary schools, there is greater freedom to create a curriculum and to put creativity at the heart of it. It's sad, but so yes, I think it's easier in the supplementary or in the heritage language schools, but it happens as well in mainstream schools where teachers find the spaces for it.
Thank you very much. We have in our chat, we have you. Thank you for a very fascinating talk. Pleasure to hear you again. And the question we have is, what challenges might multilingual students face when balancing creative activities from both complementary and mainstream schools? How can these challenges influence their ability to preserve their cultural identity while also developing academic and cognitive skills in different languages?
Right. Ideally, of course, there would be collaboration. I was 20 years ago part of a national project as part of the National Languages Strategy called Our Languages, which involved supplementary schools and mainstream schools working together on projects. We saw in one of the examples I gave you how the practices that the learners had experienced in supplementary schools were brought into the project itself when they were working with other teachers and mainstream schools as well. The challenge, theoretically, there shouldn't be a challenge. They should be complementing each other. But of course, that means recognizing that learning is taking place in different contexts. Jim Anderson and I battled from the early 90s, in fact from the 80s, to have recognition in schools for the work that was going on in supplementary schools, for that to be part of their learning portfolios, to actually bring those together, to reflect learning in that kind of way. There is a European language portfolio which gets children to reflect on the learning of languages and how it can enhance the learning of other languages. And this is really at the heart of the plurilingual approaches that I work on at the Council of Europe. It's about not having separate languages, but actually drawing on your language repertoire in order to learn from one another. So the challenge is basically when they're seen as separate, when they're not allowed to use, to have certain identities in a specific context. That's the challenge, and it's only through constant collaboration and teacher education that we can find ways of bringing all of that together. I don't know if that's answered your question, but it's what your question, which is very important, has made me think of. But maybe something more specific you were interested in.
Thank you very much. That's great. I think that was Lila asking the question. So I think it was incredibly inspiring. Just to say to everybody that the presentation, as Terry said, will be available on our website. So all the links that you have seen, you will be able to copy and follow. I would also like to say that we have, and I will explain about Padlet shortly, but thank you very much, Terry, and for both the presentation and also the really interesting work you're doing supporting the supplementary heritage language schools. And we look forward to having you here for longer, and obviously people being in touch as well. So thank you, everyone.